Well, good morning, everybody. I thought to start you off today by looking at a temperature map, and it's kind of interesting. I'm in Fargo, North Dakota this morning, and last night when I flew in, it was 4 degrees Fahrenheit when we landed, yet we did have a bit of a south wind. I was noticing the smokestacks as I was driving to the hotel were showing the southerly wind that finally developed. So actually warmed up overnight from 4 to 14, and my Uber driver was keen to tell me that tomorrow was not going to be as cold, and he was also said, hey, come back in summer, it's beautiful here. And I said, hey man, I know, I get to Fargo quite a bit. I love the northern plains. So just thinking about that though, I want to show you what the winds are up to, because while we've redeveloped a southerly wind in this area, over much of the east the wind is still certainly circulating around a much deeper area of low pressure, and so therefore still coming out of the north. It's expected to drop some very cold temperatures down here into parts of the southeast, not only this morning, but again tomorrow morning. I think tomorrow morning will be the depth of that cold at its greatest extent. Getting that flow to come across the Great Lakes has got us set up here with another day of Great Lake effect snow. So we're going to keep an eye out on that. Just take a look at this. Great wind parallel bands will be coming off of Superior and Michigan and Huron, and then shore parallel bands running along Erie and Ontario. Now, I just want to show you the latest all hazards weather map. We do have still very dense fog in parts of the Pacific Northwest. We have the freeze warnings again this morning in California Central Valley. They've now been issued down here across the southeast. This is primarily for tomorrow morning's low temperatures, but there are lake effect snow warnings that are out, here off of the tips of, Erie and Ontario. And I also want to make just note here of the strong winds rolling over the top of the Blue Ridge Mountains. Just something to consider. We have had a lot of wildfire in this area as of late. We got to keep an eye on this as we go forward. But I wanted to show you some satellite data, because yesterday, as the sun was kind of traversing the U.S., we could see where that snow was from the weekend system. You can see the very dense fog in parts of the Columbia Basin here as well. But I do like just to be able to kind of pick out where that snow line was. So you can see a pretty hard edge on it right in through this area, looking back over the last 24 hours or so. And then as the sun was setting, you can see the lake effect snow rolling off of the Great Lakes. And it's kind of fun to get in there and have a close look. Now, what I like to always see in lake effect snow is you'll notice that the western side of the lakes is always clear. And the reason for this is because as the wind leaves the land and goes in the lake, it accelerates. And what that does is that creates some surface divergence in the flow, so the air spreads out. To fill in the gap, the air sinks from above, and sinking air compressionally warms. Sinking air also clears out the sky, so it's always clear on the upwind side, and then the lake effect snow clouds begin to form here off of the temperature difference between the water and the lower atmosphere. So they're convective in nature because there's destabilization in the very lowest levels of the atmosphere. That's why these things can produce such intense snows. It's also why you often see gravity waves coming out of them as well. They can perturb the layer sitting just above them, which is sometimes statically stable, and pop off just a lot of waves in the flow like this too. I don't yet have the totals for snowfall, but I do want to point out the difference between wind parallel and shore parallel. So you can clearly see the rolls showing up here in the clouds, and they're just running parallel to the wind. So there's individual layers where you have rising motion followed by sinking. They're just rolling over one another here. And that's what you've got. And this is just a blocked beam, so ignore that. But then you get these shore parallel bands. See this one right in through here, which yesterday, just look at how much snow it dumped right on the edge. And these shore parallel bands are notoriously tricky to forecast. Any tiny shift in the wind, and all of a sudden you go from just pummeling an area with snow to completely clear skies. Like watch right here at the end of this animation. Watch this just sag south and now come right here along this edge of Lake Erie early this morning. Now, I don't have any snowfall totals for you yet, but I want to point out that we're expecting this to continue throughout the day today. There's a little frontal boundary that's going to sneak over Lake Superior by tonight. And then as we get our way into Wednesday morning, this whole lake effect snow system begins to shut itself down by Wednesday afternoon and Wednesday evening. There's still going to be some, but not like we're going to be seeing what we saw yesterday and today. Meanwhile, there is a very weak low that sneaks into California. We're going to watch this one get over to parts of Arizona and then eventually become part of a system that ejects into the southern plains, where we do have the risk of some severe storms, especially as you get over toward the lower Mississippi River Valley. But to the rest of the country, we've got to wait till later this week before any action starts to return. So that action is going to be seen first again in the Great Lakes. So just taking a look here at some of the new snowfall totals forecast by the National Digital Forecast Database through the next 60 hours or so about 5 days out, getting us to the end of Friday. And then I do want to show you the actual lake effect snow warning page from the National Weather Service out of Buffalo. Again, we're looking at another 8 to 12 here. There is more, just not covered by the Buffalo region. That's going to be down here. You saw it a moment ago, right here along the edge of Lake Erie. But there will be some locations here as you look on their color bar that still have the potential of grabbing 18 to 30 inches of snow out of this. So we'll keep a close eye on those areas. Okay, upper levels, here we go. The wave that we're going to keep an eye on, there it is, on Wednesday morning coming into California is going to sneak down into New Mexico here and kick off the risk of severe storms into parts of Texas, Louisiana, Arkansas, Mississippi. Same story that we talked about yesterday. Large ridge builds in, a lot of activity coming across Europe. If we could have gotten a complementary ridge going into Alaska, this would have been an incredible powerhouse setup for a big storm system, but we don't quite have that. So as we play forward from Thursday into Friday, we see several reinforcing troughs of colder air trying to dip into the west. And this is going to help support a system that's going to come out in the central United States here. But we don't see, the depth of the curvature, nor is there a strong, piece of the jet stream giving us a little jet streak divergence out of this as well. So the system that's going to come out this Saturday and Sunday in the southern plains in the move east is not quite as potent as hoped for. Now, there's still plenty of energy in the atmosphere here to help create this a decent disturbance, but you'll see in the models they've backed off on it a little bit. Then we find ourselves into early next week, next Tuesday, going right back into Gulf of Alaska trough, ridge over the west, convergent flow in the Midwest, so that's a drier pattern. And we liked seeing this up the East Coast, but we really need to get much more higher pressure into this area for this to be a big East Coast storm system. But there is a deep trough there. It's got a lot of folks just really interested in the way the western winter is going to play out. And we can get the North Atlantic to really behave and keep that persistent negative North Atlantic oscillation going. So how does it play out getting out there to about Thursday, December the 7th? This is next week, of course. This is when the pattern begins to shift itself around a bit. And we see the newest European model update suggesting that by 8th, 9th, and 10th, we send more troughs of low pressure into the northwest, which means the northwest has got a couple of weeks here of wetter conditions overall. But this will be interesting to watch come over the Rocky Mountains to see if we can kick off another storm system at some point out there, looking at next weekend. So there's a system this weekend and then next weekend to be keeping an eye on if you're in the midsection of the United States. All right, just want to show you, this is the day 3 outlook, just updated this morning from the Storm Prediction Center. They've now got a pretty big area down here in parts of eastern Texas, Louisiana, but we'll watch this whole area for the risk of those strong to severe storms. To pick up with the narrative by comparing the GFS to the European model, both models are now exhibiting relatively high skill scores, which is good. So there's the little system, Wednesday, midday coming into California. It's not a major precipitation maker. We do expect decent snows in the mountains down here in Arizona and New Mexico, but it's going to be the momentum of that wave carrying out Thursday night into eastern Texas, possibly Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana. See this whole area here in both models showing up with those stronger storms. I think the Storm Prediction Center's got this right, where we're going to limit pretty close to the Gulf Coast as our greatest threat area. But that system does pull through parts of the Missouri Valley and the Ohio Valley, Mississippi Valley, bringing rain over the Tennessee Valley as well, and then into the southeast, all areas that need this. But it's not quite got the full complement of high pressure, as I mentioned, this weekend here to the north to make this system just roll up the East Coast. So it kind of just pushes through. Now, while that happens, more snow in the Four Corners. We then see our next wave coming into the Pacific Northwest. This is a big snowmaker for parts of the Pacific Northwest, including the Cascades, but also over towards Spokane. It'll get into parts of Idaho. Watch it in the models here. This is now this Saturday, getting into Sunday, just rolling through the Pacific Northwest. And then what we see here as we get into the weekend, this is the system that was much more potent right in through here in the last few model runs, but it's now flattened itself out a bit. It's going to be a wet one as you go east, okay? So expect some precipitation out of this, but not quite got the curve and the flow to make this a bigger system. Now what I'm watching is this. Once we get out there to next Sunday night, Monday morning, can the European model, which is slower than the GFS, get this right? And what I mean by that is really help curl up a low right on the East Coast. You see, this would have been much more plausible, and in both models, had there been just a big area of high pressure to the north of it. Sorry, I got to make sure I do that the right way. Big area of high pressure to the north to kind of pull that cold air back in, slow the system down, make it run north, and really deliver a big snowstorm. But as you can see, the European model is attempting early next week to drop a pretty sizable system. There will be something that follows through the Red River Valley into the Midwest. You can kind of see it in the models here. This is Sunday into Monday. Just keeping an eye out on this. But the one area that stays most active as we go into next week is the Northwest, and you can see that here. Now note, I mentioned the models were behaving well, but we're out here pretty far. We're beyond a week. And the European is way different from the GFS, which puts this big system here. Notice it's not quite the same in the European. So we've already seen some pretty big disparity out that far. But kind of got an idea over the next 7 days what to expect. Okay, total precip from the European model first. There's the system coming out of the Four Corner states, but it ends up producing its severe weather in the southern plains, getting over to lower Mississippi River Valley on Thursday into Friday morning, and then it spreads that rain east. We take it out a week, this is what we get in terms of total accumulated precipitation. Look at how large this dry area is in here, Canadian Prairie into the plains. From there, I just want to show you the GFS. So again, European model, GFS, and then here is the comparison between the two. These colors representing where the GFS is wetter, and this is where the European model is wetter. From here, though, I do want to show you the snowfall totals. Okay, so we just kind of watch the snow adding up here. I want to keep an eye first in New England, because we're going to see what that system maybe does. There it is. That's the one on Sunday night into Monday. So this will be something to watch very carefully. Remember, there's not agreement yet in the models on this, so we'll have to we'll look at the ensembles in a second, but that's one part. Then the second part, just note, probably getting some snow into northern Washington, certainly throughout decent snows throughout the northern Rockies here. And look at the Cascades. And the Cascades really need to see this get added up here. Our season-to-date snowfall totals look something like this. Okay, now this goes through yesterday morning. So, of course, it's not accounting for all the lake effect that's since fallen. But I do want to show you this compared to average. We'll look at a percent of normal. Now, for those of you that just got all that snow in Kansas, getting into parts of Missouri and Iowa, okay, we're looking at anywhere between 300 and 1,500% of normal snowpack. But got to remember, it's only through Monday, November 27th, so this will look much different later in the year. What I'm watching is the West. We need to have another year of very healthy snowpack throughout the West. So to see that snow coming into the Cascades, let's get these back up here toward these colors early in the season. Same for the Northern Rockies. The Sierra Nevada's got to wait. We don't have the jet stream flow coming into the Sierra Nevada to really make that a major possibility. I did tell you that we'd take a look at those ensemble averages, and I do want to note that out there at day 10, look at this, we still have good flow coming in. It's a bit convergent in the Midwest, which is why we're going to go drier here, but we will be watching out for where this trough of low pressure makes it into week 2. But as it stands, this is the best chance at staying dry. That's what this map is showing you. So we're in the southwest drier. We're in western Texas, all throughout the plains and Canadian Prairie. Probability of staying at less than half of an inch is pretty high. Same thing for parts of Florida. But on the wetter side of this is who's got the best chance at an inch of liquid equivalent. I like this. These are areas that are in drought. Of course, this is a lot of lake effect, but take a look at the Northwest, just getting pummeled here. Probability of 2 inches in the next 10 days. Yeah, a lot. And 4 inches. Very wet conditions in the Northwest. Now, I did mention we wanted to take a look at that snow, so let's flip this down to probabilities for winter. And let's go total snow greater than 3 inches. And I'm really going to hone in to see if the models pick up on the big snows in New England. So let's step it up to 6. So this is showing up in the ensembles as well. We need to keep an eye out on that second system rolling through here for its potential for putting down some heavy snows. Love this in the Cascades and Northern Rockies, so good signal overall. Okay, week 2. Remember, we still keep the Northwest under the gun here, but there's some convergent flow in the central United States. So we see a broader area that's, I would just call drier than normal as we work our way into that first, it's really the 5th through the 11th of December, pressing forward. And to put this all into context, since the beginning of this water year, remember we start a water year on the 1st of October. We're looking here at still very dry in parts of the Appalachian Mountains where we watched those fires recently. dry throughout the south. Remember, Louisiana and Mississippi still in exceptional drought. And because California, Arizona have yet to get the full influence of that subtropical jet, we're just not there yet on returning our normal decent winter precipitation. Now, that's not to ignore other places around the country, but those are just a few that I'm watching here. Okay, temperature-wise, I want to come back to the frost discussion. Central Valley of California again this morning. We're going to watch tomorrow for the deepest air, cold air to get into northern Florida, and it looks something like this on our min temperatures. So here's today's min temperatures, and again, right in through here. I don't have numbers on it, but I'm telling you, the temperatures are going to dip down below freezing right in through this area. And then watch tomorrow morning. Actually, it's kind of neat. You can see where the north wind is versus the south wind right there, okay? North versus south. But then take a look. That's where we expect the frost line to make it by Wednesday morning. Then after that, Thursday, still cool in the southeast, another day of it, but watch the warm up ahead of that severe weather setup here in parts of the south. That's Thursday, getting into Friday and Saturday. So you're going to watch your low temperatures swing over 30 degrees down here in parts of Georgia and in Florida as we work our way from now through the weekend. There's Sunday into Monday. And to sneak over and look at the high temperatures, here's today's high temperatures and then tomorrow's. Getting into Thursday, we're going to watch again this corridor in through here, so much warmer conditions showing up in a big section of the country. We then see Friday's temperatures compared to average getting into Saturday and Sunday. Remember, more mild air is expected late this week into the weekend and then early next week. Our 5-day sliding window, the one we always like to look at, well, at least I do, so you have to look at it too, takes us out there and shows us still that mild pattern overall for that first full week of December. And then, but the only thing I saw shift a bit cooler was maybe parts of the southeast, but that's really not saying much yet with this pattern. So mild start to December. Now, I still am not settled on what the second half of December looks like. And first of all, MJO is moving. It's actually moving into some colder phases for December, like sweeping around like this. And we've also now seen our first halfway decent disruption of the polar vortex. Okay, so it's come off of its highs here in terms of wind speed and came back toward normal. At least it is in the forecast. So when we start to see things like this wobbling around, it just starts to really reduce confidence in any sort of a longer range forecast beyond 2 weeks. And I'll be honest with you, I'll be watching Alaska and Greenland. Those are the two areas to be watching for blocking high pressure for this pattern. Until I see what they're going to do, there's no point in trying to nail down the second half of this month with any sort of a model forecast. So what I need to do then is turn my attention to other parts of the world. And I'm going to give you some of the latest NDVI data for South America. We're going to first start off in Mato Grosso, where we are currently below the historic average and below a year ago. But I just want to make note here that this is not... I wouldn't say that these NDVI values are in like this disastrously low range so far. The farther south you go, the higher the values end up being. So if I come down to Paraná, they're above average, but there's been so much rain down here that we're seeing, just quite a bit of green, right? Down where there's been a lot of flooding in Rio Grande do Sul, just take a look at the values here. They're above average, where compared to a year ago, they were pretty low. Now, one area that you're going to hear a lot about in the next probably several weeks is called the Cerrado. And I'm going to try to outline it for you. It is somewhere kind of in this area, okay? It is a specific part of the growing area in Brazil. There's a lot of pasture land in here combined with places where we're growing corn, beans, and other crops. But this is an area that has had to do a lot of, there was a lot of late planting and replanting in this region. Now, Mato Grosso here, a lot of this was old rainforest, so that's why it's left out of this region. But you may hear more news coming up about this area. In fact, I got a message yesterday from my friend and colleague that lives in Goiás, and he says they're behind. Now, that doesn't mean that they're worried about the soybean crop in this area. It's late. But this could really press hard on the late harvesting of soybeans and therefore late planting of safrinha corn. That is going to be a story. And it's the same thing down here in southern Brazil. All of the rain has delayed things in southern Brazil. And as I showed you earlier, there's not been a whole lot of sunlight to get the first crops really cranking. The only places that's really showing some nice improvement as of late in terms of the rainfall is down here in like Cordoba. Now remember, a year ago, super deep drought. So they're above where they were a year ago. But I think you're going to see this red line popping up here in the next several days because there is better chances of decent rain. Look at this. Chance of getting 2 inches in the next 10 days. That's now reaching into Santa Fe, Buenos Aires, over toward Cordoba and the northern Argentina. Extremely wet conditions continue for southern Brazil. But I also want to note, pressing into Mato Grosso do Sul, over toward Sao Paulo, Minas Gerais, and then southern Goiás, better chances, 50 to 70% chance of getting 2 inches of rain. Our driest regions are here. The model battle continues. The European model did shift a bit farther to the east where this driest weather is expected, and it backed off on how far to the north the wetter anomalies are going to be. But take a look at how wet it is through this whole area. The GFS ensemble, just to show it to you for completeness here, take note, it did, keep kind of stick to its guns on this drier region, which of course infringes here on the Amazon. Last couple of areas I want to talk about. Europe. Okay, take a look at this next 10 days. Very cold. You saw about the huge snowstorm and windstorm we had over the Black Sea a few days ago, causing major problems with whiteout conditions, blizzard conditions, and huge waves. Like there was some that rolled into Sochi here. But very cold throughout Europe now, and in most of the next several days. And we do expect it to be quite active in those same areas. So a lot in the Russian wheat belt, Ukraine, a lot of this is snow. Drier, colder from the UK into the northern parts of Europe, wetter into Spain as the jet extends across the Atlantic and pushes into this area. I also want to give you a quick international perspective just to show you we're still wetter across most of Australia. That's been a pretty strong signal. Same thing for big section of the Indian Ocean and Indonesia. A lot of wetter spots after being forecast dry for so long because of the Indian Ocean dipole. That, of course, has been peeling back. I'm going to finish with one last graphic, which is one here in the Caribbean, just to point out that over the next 10 days throughout Panama, they're expected to be very dry once again. So this is going to continue to make that issue in the Panama Canal an issue to be talking about. So I'll stop there. I'll get ready to record the short video here in a few minutes, but hope you all have a good rest of your day, and we'll talk soon. Thanks.